Hey, Gregory, how are you?
I'm well. Hi, Nathan.
How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing good. I'm doing good. Further on in the day than you, I think, a little bit. So yeah, not too bad.
Yeah. Well, I do have, just so you know, I have it's recording, but obviously I can edit it before I publish it. So this is fine. We can have a little catch up here. But yeah, I'm in New York City and I've been in cybersecurity, a cybersecurity account executive since 2000, almost, pretty long time. Anyway, and worked for all the big vendors. But really glad you're able to join me today. And then what I'm looking to do is have a conversation with you and along with the other conversations I've had and start posting on LinkedIn and potentially what's it called, YouTube. Does
Okay.
that sound good?
Sounds good. No problem at
Yeah.
all.
Let me kick it off. And I gave you lots of info on what we're going to be discussing, but let me, I think what I'm gear or focusing on is small and medium sized businesses, cyber for and the challenges that they face. So that's and I think you got that from probably all my emails and messaging.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No problem
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah, excellent. All right, so I'm just I'll kick it off from here.
Sounds good.
Okay. So, hello, Nathan. Welcome to my podcast, Lessons in Building Cyber Resilience. And today, I appreciate you being my guest, and we'll focus on your journey building cyber resilience for small and medium sized businesses. So, let me just review the flow. We'll start with an introduction and a brief overview of your background, and then we'll explore the trends that you're seeing in cyber defense for SNMBs. And then we'll talk about some of the challenges and opportunities that you're focused on, and we'll wrap it up with your thoughts on where things are headed. So, as you know, what got me excited about this podcast and exploring these topics, cyber criminals have shifted their sights to small and medium sized organizations, knowing they often hold sensitive data but lack the layered defenses of larger enterprises. So, the perception out there is that lots of small companies, small and medium sized, think that they're too small to be targeted, which is a huge mistake.
I think we see that absolutely. I think it's a common misconception.
Yep.
I think that things will change, and we can come on to that a little bit later on in terms of some newer regulation that's going to force some of these on those businesses if they want to play with some of the larger enterprise organizations. But I think everything you've touched on so far is a pretty accurate representation of some of the challenges that are facing the SMB businesses.
Yeah, and the one statistic I had was 50, believe it or not, 50%, 51% of SMBs don't even have a cybersecurity plan, which is mind-boggling. But anyway, so that's kind of where we're heading on this call today. So why don't I let you introduce yourself, and then you can provide an overview of your background and SecuraNova.
Absolutely. So yeah, firstly, thanks Gregory for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be here, spending some time with you on this call today. My background in cyber goes back a little while. I joke with people it's before cyber was a thing. It tended to be more computer network security or networking management and security rather than cyber. Out of university, I ended up joining a management consultancy that did a lot of IT security projects at London Heathrow Airport. So was very involved at that time in numerous IT projects that were involved in many facets of the airport, primarily Terminal 5 and the rollout of the new terminal, and then the expansion of that technology into other terminals at that airport, into other airports that BAA owned at the time. Moving on from there, I moved into a role with GCHQ, so the UK equivalent of the NSA, where I spent 10 years as part of the active cybersecurity team, working on behalf of UK government. And then following on from that, I moved to a US cybersecurity company called Synac, where I joined as the, at the time, only operational person in EMEA, and made my way through to VP of Operations, where I was overseeing all of the post-sale teams, post-sale activities that touched the customer once a sale had been done. Everything from customer success, customer support, vulnerability management, technical account management, etc. And then founded SecuraNova with my co-founder Ian, coming up to 12 months ago. Worked with Ian at Cheltenham in my time at GCHQ. I brought him into Synac as well, given how good and how capable he is. And then lo and behold, a few years later, we've ended up starting a business together, SecuraNova, as you said. So we just noticed some gaps in the market. I think both of us are very experienced on working in cybersecurity. We'd seen some challenges around undertaking security assessments. I'll say security assessments wider than just penetration testing, which is most common in this space. Where there were delays in accessing capability, accessing people to undertake some of these assessments, we were seeing huge variances in terms of quality. So how do you have a better idea that results you're getting out of your security assessment is meeting the high levels of quality that you expect, as well as a lot of inflexibility around delays. If software teams were delayed, you'd often find those security assessment teams, those pen testing teams would almost penalize companies by charging them for the missed test and then funneling them to the back of the back of the queue. As well as seeing a lot of the way that the industry was going now, really needed more tailored assessments, less of the cookie cutter type assessments. And we thought there was an opportunity to develop a business model and a brand new business that sort of ticked all of those boxes. And then along the way, we've actually seen that there's been some shifts in the security assessment space, where there's new assessment types coming on board as different technology is changing, different pieces of architecture are changing. There's new areas that are coming on board that are requiring sort of configuration checks and a wider breadth of security assessment. So in a nutshell, that's a little bit of a background on me and a background on the business we've just started.
So it seems like, I guess what I'm hearing is, your ideal customer profile has a wide span, and certainly could be, a part of risk, and compliance is also a big part of what you do.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think ICP has been an interesting challenge for us. I think when you start a new business, you become very naive, I will say, a little bit into the types of markets, types of organizations by size, by sector that you think you can best serve. We very much had that mentality. We can serve businesses of all sizes and across all sectors. I think ICP is a bigger challenge than who you can serve. I think whilst that's true in our case, we can work across multiple markets, across multiple different sectors. There's definitely some challenges in there, I think, and there's definitely some sectors that are easier to work with when it comes to needing your services, based on the fact that maybe certain sectors are more heavily regulated than others. Therefore, they know they need your services, versus others that haven't quite caught up in that space yet. So, ICP has definitely been a bit of a journey for us. Again, technically, we can serve anyone across sectors for assessments, but again, it's amount of energy investment you have in the sales and marketing motion as well on who you can sell to. It's wider than just who you can serve.
Yeah, and I did read about. I thought your website was fantastic, and you really touched on a lot of topics that are significant. And when I read about the human-led cybersecurity delivered differently, where you combine cyber consultants, an AI-powered service delivery platform, and then a client success team. I thought that was really cool that your focus is providing fast, flexible, outcome, flash and solutions for your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in a world at the moment that quite rightly is being dominated by AI, where most things are either AI enabled or AI powered, and there's no doubt there's some organizations out there doing some incredibly powerful things with AI at the moment and delivering huge value. We think there's still a lot of value in that top layer of having the human involved. And it was a matter of how can we have that involved in a new way, in a new business model, utilizing a global set of consultants, so we're not constraining ourselves in a local sense, but opening up that to a global set. And how can we develop a platform that sits alongside it so that we can use that as almost we call it an engagement management platform rather than a SaaS-led tool. I think some of our messaging, again, going on the journey of marketing, was making it seem like we were more product-led. The product is really there to supplement and enable the human-led capabilities that we have. And, we focus very much on having an elite network. There's a lot of talent out there that we believe we can access in a unique way to deliver value to customers at scale and very on demand, which is unique. And customer service, it's often taken for granted. But, both myself and my co-founder work very much on delivering to a high level of customer service. We both come from that background. I've run customer success teams, and I think that's a very natural thing that some people avoid in cyber. It's very much tool delivery or capability delivery. We lose a little bit of that human side. So delivering a concierge level service, as one of our advisors called it, is really core to how we differentiate.
Yeah, I like that, the cybersecurity as a concierge model. But, the other part of this is make no mistake, and we're told this anyway, that since some people will debate it, but there is a skills gap, talent shortage. And, the customers that you're talking about, or prospects, or targets, right? Small and medium-sized companies. I mean, they're not going to, they don't have the funding to pay for, a SOC or a staff and so they're going to have to rely on, a managed service provider. And certainly the remote first model keeps budgets realistic.
100%. And I think that's another area where we've tried to play is our business model. This global network of consultants we have aren't permanent members of staff of ours. They work very much as a contracted motion. We don't have an office either. We don't have the need for an office. So we are very much a remote first organization. And that allows us to keep costs down and allows us to pass those cost savings on to the end customer. So I know we have a number of examples where we've been able to deliver security assessment services for the first time to organizations. They've never actually had anyone come in and test their cybersecurity, whether it's been a pen test or a human-led vulnerability assessment. They've been very much blind to some of the vulnerabilities that they can have. And a lot of these are dealing with customer data. They're dealing with payment data. But it's something that the emphasis seems to have always been put on the third party. A lot of the third party managed services exist, not just in terms of their own IT, but also the SaaS solutions that they will utilize for ticket bookings or other forms of third-party services. And I think there's been a lot of, I don't necessarily want to say naivety, but a lot of onus, I think, organizations will put on to those suppliers as opposed to taking a little bit of ownership for, the pieces that they can effectively own and test themselves.
I appreciate what you're saying. So let me ask you, when you go into, you talked about assessments, and when you go to a prospect or even a target of, a 50 to 200 person company, which blind spots or hidden risks do you almost always uncover in that first assessment?
I think it's an interesting question. I think the first layer that people should always go to, and it's one they take for granted, but what do you have? What does your attack surface look like? I think sometimes with undertaking pen testing or wider security assessments, it's very much I want you to test this very discrete set of scope. And that can be fine. It could be their core website. It could be, their core platform. very often that's not the area where attackers and threats will come from. And so I think the first stage we've always done is almost help them to build that, what do you look like externally? If I'm an external attacker, what does your organization look like? And I think before we even get into undertaking a deep assessment, if you like, of a formal pen test, I think that's always the first layer that typically uncovers things that they weren't expecting in terms of what their attack surface looks like. What do you want tested? How do you want it tested? I think those are questions that most people are fairly blind to, actually, until they come through and have someone look at that for the first time with them. Again, something enterprise organizations will have solutions for. They'll have attack surface management tools. It'll be part of the arsenal of the security they have. But again, something that just will be lower down on the priority list for an SMB. But something that is absolutely fundamental when building your security assessment portfolio, if you like, and understanding is really having that base level understanding.
Understand. In this space, cybersecurity, the relationship between, it's built on relationships, right? And so as you're developing your go-to-market strategy, are your targets typically don't have anything today? Like we talked about earlier, 51% of SMBs don't have a cyber plan. Or are you replacing, rip and replace? I'm just trying to understand how you position yourself. Again, rip and replace an existing vendor at a target, or working with targets that have nothing. And I also like the third part of it is that you're an IT help desk professional, right? You understand the all of IT, not just cyber. So in other words, you can come in as a fractional CTO, CISO, and kind of cover both areas for these, organizations that are challenged with budget.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's really coming back to ICP again, and when our go-to-market has changed a little bit as we've started to focus our ICP. Generally, if we're talking to people within the financial sector, legal sector, healthcare sectors where they're heavily regulated, they know they need pen testing or security assessments. They know what those are. They know how to procure them. They may be looking for new suppliers, changing things up a little bit, a fresh set of eyes, looking to reduce costs. Maybe they're unhappy with some of the level of service. In that space, I find the conversation a little bit easier. I'm not trying to sell to them what the service is. I have found in other areas when we're having those conversations with areas maybe such as leisure and tourism or manufacturing or logistics areas are some examples we've worked with. It's not always known. You're almost doing a very early education piece on what is a pen test, what's the problems you're trying to solve, why do you need to do this, what things do you need to test, what benefits is it going to give you as an organization. And I think focusing on business benefits and business outcomes has always been better than focusing on the specific of the assessment itself. A penetration test, people may not know what those are outside of cyber or within those areas. I think if you can talk very much to the risk reduction, for those smaller organizations, why you should have this, why it's important to you, why it's important to your customers that you have this done. And it's really been where we've pivoted a little bit recently. If we're honest, Gregory, we focus more on those sectors that just know what security assessments are and why they need them. I think sometimes it's been challenging as a new business, and I think this is one of the challenges that those small to medium-sized businesses have. It's sometimes difficult to engage with newer businesses when they're looking to gain early traction, they're looking to grow, and they don't necessarily have the time to do the education piece as part of the sales cycle. I think that's sometimes a challenge they may have.
Absolutely. And wow, what a big mistake, right? To ignore that or put that on the back burner. But, I guess an average breach for an SMB is somewhere to the tune of $3 million. It's the end of your business.
It's the end of the business. And I remember reading a statistic when we were looking at this earlier on. I think there's a number that said there's 60% of small and medium-sized businesses that are impacted by a cyber attack actually go out of business within 6 months. So it's not
Exactly.
just that initial hit, it's the longer term impact on the viability of the business. And we've seen that recently with some examples in the UK, again, with a logistics firm, a firm that's been around, I could get my numbers slightly wrong, but it's definitely the sort of 70, 80, 90, 100 years, a family run firm with a huge history, had a cyber attack, and then they're out of business. You know, that heritage was still not enough to save them from the impact of attacks. And I think people need to realize what the real impact is to the business now. And I think small and medium-sized businesses are definitely starting to wake up to that. And as I said, I think it's going to be not just due to the visibility of recent breaches we've had it in the UK, especially around ransomware, but I think that's also going to play into the fact of increasing inspection and governance. If these people want to be providers to the larger players or to larger enterprises, there's increasing regulation coming in that says your supply base, your third parties have to be up to the same level or a minimum bar. And I think that will almost force a lot of these businesses to have to up their game in terms of their cybersecurity spend and maturity across the organization.
Absolutely. So what advice? I'm not sure advice or would you give a founder of an SMB company business that around their cyber implementation and ongoing resilience? Is there something that they could use, a founder of a company, to like a model or something, or that they could use to make sure they are protected?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great question and something that's very timely with our own organization at the moment. I think there's two-part answer to this question, really. One of them is, I think, have a look at MSPs that are serving your area. If you can partner with the right MSP, look at their reputation, look at what they've done in terms of delivery, value for money, etc. I think they will put you on a good footing. They'll have some good people there who are going to be able to advise you. Will be used to dealing with businesses of your size and understanding what elements of cybersecurity tooling, if you like, you need. From our own point of view, we're finding that having some badges, some certifications definitely helps. We understand the space, we understand the different tooling that we've needed to put in place just purely because we've worked within that area for years, my co-founder and I. But we're still having to go through now more formal certifications that, yes, we've ticked this quality assurance box. Yes, we've ticked this other systems management box that says we have proper password policies adhered to. We have backups of all of our solutions. We have all of these other number of policies in place and evidential based that they're all up and running and working. So I think there's definitely some things out there that we have found that I think will be table stakes to dealing with larger organizations. ISO 27001 is certainly one of those. That's more of the globally well-known factors. Also back home in the UK, we have something called Cyber Essentials Plus, which is put out by the NCSC, the kind of UK organisation, and that again gives small and medium-sized businesses a really good idea of different protections that they need to have in place. It's almost again the table stakes of operating a small business.
Nice. Do you ever get pushback on some of the recommendations? Like, oh, we can't, multi-factor authentication, zero trust, encryption, on the desktop. Do your customers or prospects or targets, do they give you any pushback on some of these?
I think cost is always a challenge, not just for us, but I think across the board. I think it's always a priority call. I don't think there's a business out there, even the largest enterprise, which can really afford every single solution that they'd really like to have. I think it's always a trade-off. I think when it comes to having that baseline, that base level, again, there are some things that you just need to have in place. I think MFA is part of that for certain tooling, certain password policies, etc. use of firewalls, use of those types of systems. I think it's gotten to the point now that businesses accept if you don't have those, almost your customers will be asking questions. We certainly have found that, again, I can talk very much as a small and medium-sized business ourselves, that we're facing these questions from customers as well. Do you have this certificate? Do you have this policy? And then prove it. Put the evidential information into your submission that says what you're doing in this space, and it's evidential based. And so I think we're certainly seeing that as well. But I'm not seeing huge amounts of pushback when they know what they want. I think they will certainly question price or the why do I need this if something looks a little bit over-engineered, shall we say, in terms of the types of solutions being implemented.
Well, it sounds like, the more educated your targets are, the better, obviously. And even before you get there, hopefully an educated consumer is, your best customer, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, again, it comes back to the ICP. I think if you can have an educated customer, and I think that's something that is going to be really big in the SMB space, is how do you provide that education to everybody? Again, one of the deltas we see, and you touched on this with IT service, wider than just cyber. When we're talking to more enterprise organizations, I'll be talking to their CISO or their InfoSec manager or someone who's working within cybersecurity, just understands that environment, understands the context of what we're delivering, and will understand the benefits in terms of how we differentiate. When you're talking to those smaller organizations, they may not have a cyber professional. They may just have an IT manager. And he's running a standard IT practice of making sure things within the business are working, the Microsoft 365 or pick your provider. Typically Microsoft in that space is working for everybody, dealing with password resets, those types of things. They're not really understanding of what the threats are from a cyber perspective, certainly not at the depth that someone that works within the industry has. And we've seen that firsthand with some of the conversations we've been having, where it's been quite eye-opening, I think, to some of those IT managers when you're providing them with some of the results that they have to then go and action. It can come as a bit of a shock for the first time. So I think that's a delta that they sometimes have. Resources is part of that. It's sometimes financial resources, but again, as you touched on, it's sometimes people, both in terms of number of people who can help and skilled people, because, as you said, those smaller organizations don't really have those skills, and they're spending a lot more time now, which I think is a great move for those organizations, bringing in, as you said, those virtual CISOs, virtual CTOs, other practices at that level, which is helping them build their cyber program. And there's just experts are working within that small or medium size space. They know what they need, they understand what solutions the business needs, and they can very much tailor what cyber solutions they need out of it. Again, that can be when the next set of challenges start, because as I'm sure you've seen, Gregory, as I have, it's a busy market in cyber. There's so many people selling so many different solutions, even within the same sort of subsectors of the market. Even being told you need a zero trust solution. Where do I start? Who am I going to buy it from? I need a firewall. I need some pen testing. I need name your cyber outcome. It's a really confusing market out there for people. So I think having people who can help them navigate that, whether that's a virtual CISO, whether that's a partnership with an MSP, MSSP that can help them shape the requirements and help them deliver that, is going to be really critical for small businesses.
I absolutely agree. So, well said, Nathan. So looking, for S&MBs and future resilience. So say, look ahead like 5 years. With AI-driven threats and tighter budgets, what does cyber resilient for S&MBs mean to you?
I think it's a great question. I actually think budgets are tightening. I think they're ever being looked at, but I actually think we'll start to see spend on cyber in the small and medium-sized business market actually increase over the next 5 years. I think it's been underserved in a number of areas. I think budgets will always be looked at. I think that is the case in cyber and IT as it is across the whole business on how we can drive efficiencies. I also think a lot of tools and products at the moment are it's an AI this or an AI that. I think we will start to turn around in the next sort of 6 to 12 months, going back to the business outcomes again. We'll just assume AI is everywhere. And if you're not using AI, you're probably not developing a tool that's being used in the most efficient manner or cost efficient manner. And I think we'll just very much come back to what are the outcomes you need to achieve? What are the solutions you need to get there? And I think it's going to be for small and medium-sized businesses, as we've touched on a little bit in this, I think it's going to be really important for them to partner with MSPs, MSSPs, and help them deliver those services. I think it's going to be very challenging on a budget for them to manage multiple vendors independently. I think that's a challenge even large organizations have now. There's hundreds of tools, hundreds of implementations. It's costly. It's great you have a dashboard and you have a platform, but somebody's got to look at that output. Somebody's got to action the information that's coming out of it. And I think that's very challenging in the small and medium-sized business space. So I think having an MSP, MSSP that they can work with, again, understanding their requirements, what does the business need for the stage it's at, the size it's at, the risk that they're facing, and partnering with someone who can help is going to be critical for them going forward. But I can see budgets increasing. As I said, I think increased regulation, increased inspection on these organizations will force people to not only look at this from a nice to have point of view, it's going to be essential. And again, I can talk very much about our own business. We've been trading for just over 5 months. We've existed for just under a year, been trading for just under 5 months. We've got this far, and now we've started to say, yeah, we actually need to invest in formal certifications. It's something that's gone away from a nice to have to an essential in order to deal with some of the organizations that thankfully want to deal with us. But we've got to come up to that level now as well in terms of certification. And I think you'll see that across the board for multiple small and medium-sized businesses.
Excellent. And how are you getting your value prop out to the marketplace? In other words, there are all there's the marketplace itself, small and medium size, may be even smaller enterprises. But how are you and getting your value prop out there to the market where you can let people know what SecuraNova is doing in the space and the unique differentiators that you provide and how you can help these SMBs and small enterprises in a world where, like we talked about, the attack surface is expanding nonstop. It's getting bigger. Now the bad guys have AI and machine learning, so they're very sophisticated. Social engineering is like, wow, it is incredible. So, and then there's, smishing and phishing and, the human factor around, attacks, right? A busy person clicking on a link or providing, credentials, like, wow.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's still the biggest risk, I think. Honestly, if you look at the organizations that, again, have experienced breaches recently, it tends to be less of a tooling issue or a testing issue. It tends to be more playing on the human vulnerability side. So training is absolutely key in that space. Having regular training and education of staff, regardless of the size of the organization, I just think is absolutely critical. Again, some of the governance that you'll see, some of these standards will mandate that and force that. So it's part of the assessment and part of the checklist you'll go through. Going back to your first question about how do we cut through the noise, it's, again, we're a small business that's bootstrapping. So we haven't taken investment. We want to bootstrap. We want to be in control of how we deliver. So we're delivering the best possible service we can to our customers. We've got multiple ways at the moment that we're going to market. One of those you very kindly touched on was the website. I think we're on iteration 3 of the website at the moment on trying to get some of the messaging right. Again, having a good website that you can point to is really helpful. But our go-to-market motion is really focused in 3 different areas. One of them is around just organic messaging on LinkedIn. Again, when you're doing marketing on a budget, attempting to get on LinkedIn, getting the messages right there has been key. We've partnered with a local organization that has supported us with some of the messaging, which has been super helpful in terms of enablement, ensuring our messaging is key. And so that's been part one, and that's definitely helped. It's good to speak to people that have said, I've seen your messaging, I've seen something around speed, I've seen something around your tailored outcomes, and you're kind of ticking a box, so they've seen the messaging, which is great. How much lead generation versus brand awareness? But again, we're still very early days, and I know you need kind of hours of content really on board to kind of really hit home. The second one is we've utilized an SDR company. So we have, rather than having a full-time SDR on board ourselves cold calling, we've partnered with an organization that's very successfully taken the information we've provided them about our ICP and have gone out and done cold introductions to people, cold calling, that again have got the right organizations in front of us, which has been really successful. And then longer term, we're actually looking at, we've touched on MSPs, MSSPs as part of this conversation. That will be much more of a strategic play where we've onboarded with a handful already, but we'll be able to deliver our core services via MSP partners. So it's a way that we believe is giving benefit, including to small and medium-sized businesses, not just enterprises. We actually service both at the moment. But SMBs will find it, I think, much easier to leverage our services via an existing partner they have and have us deliver our services through there than trying to do multiple different engagement to lots of other suppliers. So I think, yeah, LinkedIn native, SDR company, and then looking at longer term partnerships has been key.
Excellent. I agree with that. As a cyber salesperson, my go to market, plan to attainment, right, was direct and partners and then customers. I mean, you need to know when you need to leverage your customers and the unique value that you're supplying to them, and then the SDR marketing. So there is a multiple way to approach go to market.
Absolutely. And I think it's something that's been probably the biggest learning point in education. Both Ian and myself are very operational focused. We've worked in operational areas of the business, both in public and private sector. That's definitely been something that's been challenging for us. I think we understand sales, we understand marketing to a degree. Then I think it goes into that next level of understanding what the norm is. Don't take every email that's not returned as someone being offensive to you. It's okay. It's very different dealing with a customer and you're dealing with them once a deal has been sold and nurturing a relationship to actually getting that deal over the line. So it's definitely been an education. I think one of the biggest areas of growth we've had is developing that go-to-market plan. There's just the two of us, and not just that go-to-market plan, but everything that supports it. Again, development of the website, development and the tweaking and iteration of the messaging, understanding actually how important that is, what is going to hook and stick with somebody as a message, has been something that has been critical for us. I think under the hood, what we've done has changed very little, if at all. I think how we have communicated that, how we're attempting to message that, is definitely an area that's changed. I think a key example I will give you is we have a platform. As you touched on at the start, we have an AI-powered platform that we use for engagement management. We started by leading with the platform, and people thought that we were a SaaS organization. And we're not a SaaS organization. What we are is a human-led organization, but we have a platform that allows us to deliver those services remotely. So it's, not leading with the platform has actually been a good thing. Bringing it in as a secondary part of the conversation and having that human-led element has been far more powerful. And we started to see a little bit, certainly a number of the CISOs I've been speaking to are starting to get a little bit AI fatigued. I think they appreciate it's out there. Everyone appreciates it's there. I think we're definitely seeing some benefit on our side around having their actual human beings, their elite pen testers. There's someone I can talk to. And I think that's something that is certainly helping us at the moment from a go-to-market and messaging point of view.
Oh, that's awesome. And I agree. I mean, that's critical. The human part of it is so critical. And, people still buy from people and I like what I thought that was interesting what you said. The messaging can get confusing if you're leading with technology and people hear AI and like, oh, AI, wait a minute. So, they jump to conclusions or maybe aren't, understanding, really what you're trying to, convey, right? With how you're delivering it. I mean, it was a mistake. They didn't really get it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we've been as guilty as anyone else as we've just gone on this startup journey. I think it's very easy to lead with features. You get very
Yep.
excited about what you do. I think actually peeling everything right back to what is the business problem I'm helping that organization solve? And I think when we look at just one of the things where we think we differentiate on speed, where other people are waiting weeks for security assessments to get booked in, we can start typically within 24 hours. I think our quickest engagement was 45 minutes. That is a real benefit to people if they're looking at releasing software, integrating into their SDLC, undergoing some form of digital transformation and want assurance before going live. Having the ability to move quickly is key. And doing that, moving quickly with people that are elite at what they do, even on its own is good enough and something that's different. Waiting for security testing now is something which is challenging for organizations when they need to move at pace. As you said, AI is driving organizations to move at pace because the attackers and the threats are coming at pace.
I agree.
If you can't move with them, that's always going to be a challenge.
Big challenge. Well, Nathan, I mean, this was really a robust, wonderful conversation. And I appreciate your level of expertise and your differentiators that you're building into SecuraNova. I like what you said about the human-led aspect of things and your speed to helping your the concierge as a cyber as a concierge model and being able to act quickly for your clients. And I think that's really great. So I do really appreciate all your insights, and I really excited to work with you.
Absolutely, Gregory. Same here. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Have a great rest of the day.
You too. Bye-bye.